Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Matthew Sears and I'm the Vice President International for Higher Ground Education and the co-chair of the Education Committee of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, a nonprofit, non-governmental organization created in 1977. Today we have over 1,400 members representing nearly 300 companies, which makes us one of the largest Canadian business organizations outside of Canada and one of the most active international chambers in Hong Kong. We have about 40% of our membership, which is non-Canadian. So it's important to know that we are an inclusive and diverse community. Everyone is welcome. You don't have to be Canadian. What does the Chamber do exactly? We deliver 4 services primarily to our members: representation and advocacy, business promotion, networking and brand exposure, learning and training, and information and insight. Today, we are going to be discussing the value of an MBA. The advantages and disadvantages of pursuing higher education and continuing studies, whether it's on a part-time or full-time basis. So thank you very much for joining us today. We're lucky to be joined today by a panel of experts on the topic. Speaking today, we have Jonathan Deforge, the head of postgraduate and professional development, and an experienced MBA coach at Prep Zone Academy, which is Singapore's largest chess prep consultancy. We have Michael Kerr, the co-president of the Ivey Alumni Association and an MBA graduate of Ivey Business School at Western University, which offers one of Canada's top MBA programs. And Dimitrios Perdikoulis, head of operations at Evolution Partners, a boutique management consultancy with an international presence. He has just completed a program with Harvard Business School and is actively involved in recruiting MBAs and non-MBA graduates alike. So if you have any questions as we go through this panel discussion, please feel free to jump in at any point. I've got the chat box open, so I'll be taking a look. If you've got a burning question that you can't wait till the end of the session, go ahead and drop it in there and we'll try and steer the conversation towards it. If you'd rather wait until the end of the event, we will be setting aside about 10 or 15 minutes towards the end for Q&A. So whatever you like. So to get started, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to give a short introduction. Why don't we start with you, Michael?
Great, thanks, Matt. So just to be aware, I will use Ivey, the business school, and Western University interchangeably. So don't be confused if that's what you hear. Again, as Matt said, I did go to the University of Western Ontario Business School, and I'm currently heading up the Alumni Association here in Hong Kong. I ended up in Hong Kong after business school. I met my wife through the program, and she was a local Hong Konger. So not only did I get benefit from the education, but I got some benefit there as well. And I think the MBA obviously, taught me that the world was it was a global sort of world, and so I took advantage of that. So I'll just give you a little bit of background on what I did. So I did the executive program at the University of Western Ontario. I was 39 when I did this program. And that at the time was the average age, so I did not do this right from undergrad. We had a class of about 55 people. About 10 of them were women. This has gone up quite a bit now in the last 10 years. About 30% of the Western programs have about 30% women. At the time, we probably only had about 10 international students, but today we have most of the programs are quite internationally focused, probably 50%. I paid $90,000 for this program in 2006, just to give you some benefit. The reason I chose Western, it was the only school I wanted to go to. I had a good story to tell. Back in the mid 2000s, I'd sold the company that I'd worked for some stock. I had the money to pay for it, and it was what I wanted to do. My father had a colleague who had gone to Western, did his MBA, who I had a lot of respect for, and that was a school that I wanted to go to. My original undergrad was in computer science. I had mostly hands-on technical roles, and my goal at sort of my mid-30s was to transition to something that was more business orientated. And I would say for the most part that I accomplished that. I ended up in project management, business development, program management. And while I didn't have sort of a career ladder type career, I feel I got to do a lot of different things that my MBA provided me. So the other thing that sort of motivated me was when I was 30, my father was 55. He lost his job and never had a full-time job again, despite having a very good career, and having a lot of academic success as a young man. And I thought, hey, I need as much, education as if my father loses his job at 55, then this could happen to me. And I wanted to load myself up with, as much as I could, to sort of get work, whether it is consulting or speaking engagements or anything. And so that was the decision behind what I did. So hopefully that wasn't too long-winded, but thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Mike. Dimitrios, why don't we hear from you?
Hi, I'm Dimitrios, Head of Operations at Evolution Partners. I've recently completed the Credential of Readiness at Harvard Business School online as part of my professional development pathway at Evolution Partners. I hold a master's degree from King's College London in international conflict studies, so I'm more than happy to also talk about the fact that you don't always have to do very specific degrees to work in different areas that you're very interested in. I have a background in international relations. I'm very passionate about business, so I ended up building a story that would enable me to secure a role in business down the line. So that's also something I'm very keen to discuss. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send them through. In terms of my work at Evolution Partners, I oversee a number of functions, including marketing, HR, and recruitment. And we often screen a lot of CVs. We take a lot of pride in being a 2-year-old startup, in that the whole recruitment process is done by human beings. There is no AI, there is no automation. We don't envision wanting to automate the process because we believe in a people-first approach. And a people-first approach means, first and foremost, going through the CVs manually, because by doing that, you ensure you give everybody equal chance as much as possible, of course. And so we are constantly looking for talented individuals, whether they have MBA degrees or not. This is something we can discuss in today's event. But it's very interesting to see where the future of higher education is going. And I'm very, very happy to be a part of this panel. So thank you very much once again.
Thanks, Dimitrios. And last but not least, Jonathan.
Well, I mean, I'm very similar to Dimitrios. I didn't study business. My parents wanted me to be a diplomat. So I'm kind of like the example that you don't necessarily need an MBA to move into business, to have career pivot. I've worked in several industries, always been able to reinvent myself, but been stuck on my own will in the education sector for the last 10 years. Found it absolutely fascinating to basically work with individuals, help them achieve their greater potential. And on a yearly basis, I'll be working with 80 to 100 MBA applicants, mostly full-time program, like top 10, top 12. A lot also of part-time MBA, because in Singapore, very similar to Hong Kong, we have 3 strong universities that have part-time programs. So we will be able to also, today, hopefully discuss the pros and cons of the full-time versus the part-time. There is no right or wrong. It's really about your own circumstances. I'm not Canadian. I think the only connection I have with Canada was to get beaten every time we went to Canada to play hockey with Canadians. My team didn't end up very well all the time, but I did not, hold any grudges against Canadian because of that.
Thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate that. So why don't we pick it up with you? I think the event today is to MBA or not to MBA. Let's start with the positive side. What's the value proposition here, and for who is an MBA worth it? Is it, you hear about people who want to change industries, who want to climb that career ladder that Michael talked about, maybe to change countries, to change geographies. What are the sort of top couple of scenarios or situations in which you would recommend an MBA to somebody, Jonathan?
All right, so truth be told, when we ask our applicants, why do you want to go for an MBA, they'll come with a lot of reasons. Like, I want to have a greater impact, I want to change the world. Truth be told, the motivation number one is better income. Like, the MBA has a direct impact on your level of income, be it with or without a career switch. I mean, if you look at the post-MBA salary range, we're talking about 120 to 150,000 US a year at most, like top 50 business school. Whereas pre-MBA, my applicants are going to earn between 60 to, let's say, $80,000. There's a huge salary jump post-MBA, and I think that's the motivation number one is, no one really is driven by money only, but you want to be comfortable. Now, having said that, I think you touched it. I think career pivot is really the most, the number one motivation outside of the money. Career pivot means usually it can be both functional, industry, but also geographic location. The biggest one usually is like functional. We have a lot of more technical applicants, like engineers, software engineers, product manager who want to move more into like a business role, and of course the industry switch. So if you look at, let's say, our 1,800 applicants a year, the majority wants to do consulting. And to get into consulting, if you haven't been able to get into a top firm after your undergrad, you've got to get an MBA. If not, you have to wait 20 more years, become like an expert in your field, and then be hired like in a very specific pattern as a partner. So consulting is very appealing. Then of course you have the tech. I think the tech industry has been the main new player of the last 10 years. Tech was nowhere to be seen with MBAs. They've been claiming we don't look at degrees, we don't believe in degrees much. It's not very true. I mean, they do hire a lot of MBA. The Google, the Facebook, Amazon has become the largest employer of MBA globally. Like, just a point of comparison, McKinsey was always number one. McKinsey usually hire 500 to 600 people a year out of MBA program. Amazon is 1,000 plus. So because of that, people know that the MBA is going to allow them to also explore, like have more opportunities, what career they can't really touch directly. So I think business school have done a fantastic job to create a monopoly around this like early career pivot. And that's where people are being basically like very drawn towards the MBA. It's like, it's this career evolution they're seeking for. And of course, then it will be the network, there will be like the experience, it's a life experience. And I think, we can talk about this, like the value proposition of Canadian business school as well on that. Is like from a life perspective, it's tremendous. But that's usually like the main motivation of people going for business school. It's really like, it's a career driven motivation.
Oh, that's really helpful. And I didn't realize Amazon had sort of jumped over McKinsey there. That's
oh yeah, like it's insane. Like they scale so fast that they have a need for middle management. And the beauty of Amazon is like, so McKinsey will only recruit in like 20, 25 schools. Amazon will recruit at pretty much any school, in like even like non-ranked school. Like they have a need for middle managers. So Amazon is a huge employer of MBA grads.
That's a perfect segue, I think, into the next question I was going to ask, which is about the brand, and perhaps Dimitrios, you could start, and then Michael, I'd be interested to hear your perspective as well. How much did the brand matter in your choice, in your decision? Obviously, you ended up doing a Harvard program. Mike, you ended up doing a program at Ivey. This was the top rated one in Canada. How much did brand figure into your decision, and did you think that was worth it?
Well, even if we take it a step back and we look at my decision to study at King's College London, the brand matters. And I think anybody who says it doesn't may not fully understand the dynamics of being employable or giving yourself the best chance to get the sort of roles that you desire. So with King's College, it was very, very clear. They happen to have the best war studies department in the world. And so that made sense. Why would you want to study international conflict anywhere else? And more recently with the Harvard program, again, brand really matters. We wanted to, as part of my professional development pathway, identify a program that is holistic, that's going to give me all the necessary tools that I can then apply in my day-to-day job as head of operations. So in my opinion, I think it matters not only in terms of the quality that you get, but also in terms of the weight that it has on your CV. Now, I'm not saying it should be that way or it's fair that it is that way, because it does create an unfair advantage to the people that can access the better programs or the better brands, so to speak. So in terms of quality itself, I think you can definitely find a lot of programs out there that have a high enough level in terms of what they offer. But I think if you compare two equal programs and one had a brand name and the other didn't, you would be in an advantage to be employed with a program that has the stronger brand, in my opinion. That's what I see. We try to avoid making that sort of judgment in terms of our recruitment at Evolution Partners. So our first couple of analysts who aren't MBA candidates, so to speak, but we will employ people from universities if they show us that they can go through our recruitment process in a very, very strong way. So whether it's the written assignment or the first interview, or whether it's the interviews with our partners, if they can demonstrate that they are the strongest candidate, then we're more than happy to give that role and that position to someone who may not be from the most reputable university in comparison to the universities we've already mentioned so far.
If I look at the class that I graduated in, 55 people 15 years ago, so certainly the top 20% of that class who, I think they had and have had wonderful careers. Some have been able to turn themselves into CEOs, senior level positions at large pharmaceutical companies. Those people leveraged both the brand and their capability into something that made a difference. I would say the bottom 20% of the class should have just taken the money and burned it in the fireplace. At least it would have kept them warm, on a hot, cold summer's or winter's day in Canada. That, and then the 60% in the middle, you would have to, I think they got different kinds of value out of it over the last 15 years. And so does brand matter? It matters a little bit, but I think those who were the most capable were able to leverage both their skill set and a bit of brand to make a difference. Now, I've thoroughly enjoyed the network that I got from Ivey. So Ivey used to have a program in Hong Kong. We have a lot of alumni, over 400 in Hong Kong. And we constantly have events, and I've been able to interact with a wide range of people that I thoroughly enjoyed interacting with. I wouldn't necessarily say that they led me to more employment, but I enjoyed the interaction with them. And if I go back to Canada, I truly believe that I can leverage that Ivey brand, just because there's more things going on. I can constantly go back to the school, and I can take advantage of what Ivey has to hopefully improve my career over a lifetime. And I think that's what I felt I bought, and that's what I'm hoping I can continue to take advantage of throughout my life.
That's a good segue to the next question on network. But before we go there, I do want to get Jonathan's input as well on the question of brand. I mean,
yeah,
you mentioned
just
top 10, top 12 schools.
A quick one on the brand, right? So number one, you have thousands of MBA. I mean, accredited MBA bid by one of the three main bodies. So, if we look at the brand, like we can be safe with, let's say, the top 50, you're already on even the top 100, you're still going to the elite of the elite, right? And I think something what people sometimes misunderstand is the branding. Yeah, brand matters. We all have to have the best credential. I think it's natural, it's human nature. But you also have to think of the competition, the playing field, your battlefield. So here's the thing, what you want to be sure is you target schools that are feeders toward the kind of employers you're looking at. So you can't go to Taper if you really want to go to McKinsey, because McKinsey doesn't really hire from Taper. But you could go to Ross. So let's say you have an offer from Ross and an offer from MIT. At MIT, your competition is going to increase. The level of competition you face at MIT that want to get into McKinsey is going to be stronger than the competition you may face at Ross or a slightly lower ranked school. And I think we have an example, a few years back, we had the Spanish applicants got into INSEAD. It was a bit of a half profile, not extremely good, but not bad. But we also got him an offer in ISB, which is a leading Indian school. And we told him, it's the companies you're targeting, you have no chance getting into them with INSEAD because you will be beaten by anybody else. Went to ISB, and because of the passport that he had, he got 6 offers from companies he would have never gotten an offer out of INSEAD because the competition would have been way too high. So I think you really have to play both the brand and your own employability. You have to do a lot of research on which employers hire from which school. So KKR, for example, if you don't go to Harvard, there is no pathway to KKR. KKR only hire from Harvard Business School. So there are things you need to do research about. And it's much more important than the ranking and the branding, I would say.
I think that's a really good perspective. I don't have much context on the MBA, but I did used to work in admissions consulting as well for undergraduate. And I think the notion that there is an absolute ranking, that everybody looks at the same list, is not true. As you said, Jonathan, the ranking is different depending on what you care about. And Dimitrios, I think in your answer too, it's sort of that ranking is relative to war studies or international conflict or your pursuit of a job in a particular private equity firm. So brand matters, but brand is relative and sort of relative to your own personal profile, your own objectives.
Can I add one point? I mean, if you are going to live in Nebraska for your whole life, right, and you don't want to, then go to the University of Nebraska. You'll be fine, right? Nobody will go, oh, why did you go to the University of Nebraska, right? Live in Omaha for the next 50 years. But if you want to go to New York City, you're going to appreciate that the competition is going to be different. And I would
that's
say
exactly what Alexander is asking here in the chat here is what about the geographical limitations? And so, Michael, you mentioned that, you know, if you move back to Canada, you expect to reap more from the Ivey brand than perhaps you could in Hong Kong.
I would say that that the Ivey brand is not as, you know, internationally, I would say it's fair to say that, you know, it's not as competitive or not as strong as the other brands out of the US specifically, for sure, right? It's not a guarantee that I'm going to get an interview at wherever I want from Ivey. That's just not the case. Whereas you probably would if you have Harvard or Stanford, then yeah, you would.
So what about the other way around?
If your goal is to work in Toronto for the rest of your life, then you know, that'll carry enough weight throughout your career.
I think just to stick on this one for one more question, Jonathan, you kind of alluded to like a big fish in a small pond dynamic, and to what extent do you see that being the case also? You know, if I were to say, on the one hand, if I were to go back to Canada and I got an MBA from Ivey or Rotman, that's great. But I would be one of 1,000 Canadians in Rotman doing an MBA, pursuing a job in Canada. What is the advantage of being somebody who says, you know what, I actually have an MBA from INSEAD, or I have an MBA from UST, well, UST, I don't know, another school in Asia, a non-North American one. Is there a similar sort of big fish, small pond dynamic there?
I think like two things. Like number one, like to be entirely honest, like I know there was a question about this. I think we can touch it now. Like the brand of your MBA only matters like on your first job after graduation. Like in 10 years, I'm not going to hire you because you're going to Harvard or Stanford or Wharton or whichever school. I'm going to hire you because of your last 3-4 years of work experience that is relevant to the kind of job I want to have. Now, there is always luck. If the hiring manager is a Harvard guy, you went to Harvard, you have more chance to get the job, but that's purely probability, it's pure luck. We're not going to take this into account. I think, you know, like the reason why it's always easier for an international student to get into a program. So if we talk about HKUS in Hong Kong, if you're Hong Kongese, it's harder to get in than if you're French like me. I could go with a 590 GMAT because they need diversity. And the same way for someone like Mike to get into Ivey, it was more competitive than for, again, myself as a French, I would have gotten more chance to get in because all the school need this. So I think what matters is more like, where do you want to be in the next 2-3 years? Like, you know, in 5 years, the school you've been to, I mean, it's on your CV, it's nice, but people, to be entirely honest, just won't care. They won't hire you because you went to school A or B. They will hire you because so you really want to determine your short-term goal. The reason we spend so much time working on short-term goal is because if we have them wrong, whatever school you go for is not going to be the right fit for you.
Oh, Dimitrios, go ahead.
I thought I might as well use the functionality on the call. So something that I wanted to talk about, which touches on the points that have just been mentioned. I completely agree. I do believe that brand is important, but I also think that it's not the right kind of mentality to rely on just the brand. It takes a lot more to be successful, and especially if you're interested in being successful in a sustainable manner that is more focused on the long term as opposed to success for just 2-3 years. So as Jonathan has just said, it's not just about getting the best degree, so to speak, in terms of brand and then banking on that for the rest of your life. It takes a lot more to be successful. And we see this with the consultants we hire. We see this with the people that send through. We receive hundreds of essays, hundreds of CVs. And there have been instances where people who have completed very reputable degrees don't make it through the next rounds because there is that reliance on, oh, it's okay, I have this on my CV and it's going to get me the job. I think it takes a lot more. It takes constant curiosity. It takes constant upskilling. It takes people skills. So it doesn't matter if you're incredible academically. How do you work a room? How do you manage senior stakeholders? Are you strong at upward management and downward management? So there are a number of things that impact someone's professional success. It's not just, oh, I'll do this degree, I'll pay a ton of money for it, and then I'll be fine. I think it's very important, especially as our world is changing rapidly, I'd say faster than ever before, as a result, of course, of the pandemic. It's important to take into consideration not just how strong the degree is, but how much you yourself are willing to do what it takes to be the best in your field, whatever field that may be.
Yeah, good point. And Michael, that's a good point also about that Hong Kong is particularly brand oriented. I don't know if the attendees got to see that message you sent. And so in Hong Kong, the value of a top US school or top school anywhere is very valuable. So let's move on to a slightly different area. I mean, if you've decided to do an MBA, you've decided to pursue further studies, how do you decide what to do? How do you decide where to do it? And where, I mean, let's broaden the scope also. I think, you know, the headline topic here is an MBA, but lots of people pursue master's degrees for the same reasons. Maybe Jonathan, I'd like to start with you. Where do you, I assume some of your clients come to you as individuals, some of them may come to you through their employers. What do they come to you with, and how do you sort of guide them towards, should it be an MBA, should it be a master's? How do you choose a program within one of those schools, or what's your process?
So to be entirely transparent, I think there's been like a brainwash around the MBA. So like they come very, I mean, like basically they've been thinking of an MBA from the first day of university for a lot of them. Like they've seen the seniors going for business school. They've read so many stories about, I mean, business school have done a terrific job at marketing the MBA, right? So we don't really have a lot of discussion because people are very set. Now, sometimes we have a dual degree, like they will be like, hey, can I do an MBA and an MPA, an MBA and a JD? We find the dual degree like way too expensive, way too long. We don't see the value out of it. It doesn't really add any value. Like, I mean, people, you either go for an MBA or an MPA because you lose on both the networking side, basically, when you do a dual degree. So I think like very few people really question, like, should I go for a master's or an MBA? So the cardinal rule is very simple. Pre-experience individual, go for masters. So if you haven't gotten any work experience, and if you want to further your education to position yourself as a much stronger candidate on the job market for your first job, then you look at masters and you have like, you know, the junior MBA, the master's in management, and that would be the only one we would kind of like advise people to go for, because masters in marketing are kind of rubbish. They change every year. I mean, marketing changes so fast that school can't really adapt to the speed of like the change of marketing. And I think, you know, then of course we have like masters like Dimitri did, like more specialized, but out of business. Those are fantastic. But in pure business, we're going to be looking at three masters in finance, management, and data science / data analytics. I think the main discussion we have with our applicant is more, I mean, a few of them, not a lot. It's more about part-time versus full-time MBA. And I think that's where like confusion is created. I think people, I hear a lot like, oh, part-time MBA is like a discounted MBA. And I couldn't disagree more with that statement. I mean, I like to call the part-time MBA like an MBA for high flyers. If you like your job, if you like the direction of your career trajectory, if you're totally good with what you're doing, like functionally and industry-wise, you don't need to quit your job, go for a full-time, take a huge gamble, because you may not even find a job that you like post-MBA. So it's really more about where are you on your career? Am I stuck? Do I want like a boost? Do I want a pivot? Then you have to go full-time, because part-time MBA don't provide career services extensively. You have just a little bit. Part-time MBA is for people who are going to stay in their job and progress in their career and eventually change jobs, but not at graduation. It could be during the program a bit later. Same with the MBA, you will see an evolution more towards like 3-5 years down the line. That's where you really see the impact of an MBA because it's part-time. So I think it's more like people should consider the part-time MBA more. I think it's like it's one of the degrees that is not well regarded enough on the market. But for like Masters versus MBA, honestly, if you have more than 1 year work experience when you start to think about going to school and you want to look at the business kind of degrees, then do not consider masters, because most of the students in masters will be basically fresh grad. They will just completed their undergrad and go straight to a master. So, you know, the value of what you learn comes also, and Mike, I'm sure wouldn't disagree, like come a lot from your peers, much more than from the curriculum, the faculty. I mean, the curriculum, it's all online for free. You go on Coursera, edX, you know, YouTube, you find every course you want from an MBA curriculum for free or for very cheap. You want to learn from your peers. Young students, I mean, they have fresh perspective, but if you have 5-6 years experience and you're an expert in your domain, you're going to get a bit bored of like the overall experience.
In an MBA, what do you do, right? What are they teaching you? And what they're essentially teaching you to do is to evaluate projects, right? If you have a limited amount of money in a company, and you need to decide what to do with it, and there are different options, you know, the entire program is trying to teach you, you know, how to evaluate these. And we read, you know, hundreds of case studies over and over, right, to try and help you decide, and you discuss with your classmates, you know, what they should do in this particular situation. That's essentially the education that you're getting, and the discussion that you have, as Jonathan said, with your classmates. So if you like corporate life, you know, if you like the politics of, you know, interacting with your colleagues, if you see yourself working for an organization for, you know, the rest of your life, if you enjoy seeking challenge, then yeah, I think an MBA, you know, can be something that will add value to your life. If you're younger, again, as Jonathan says, and you're looking for, you know, you're a young person, you're trying to differentiate yourself, get a job that has a specific skill set, then going after something that gets you skills in data science or finance or accounting may be a great choice. But again, you know, this is something that eventually is going to hopefully pay off over the course of your career, where you're, you know, evaluating what to do and move the company forward. If that interests you, then maybe it's for you.
And I think, to add to that, the underlying message, at least from what I'm getting from today's webinar, is that there are a lot of components that need to be looked at when making such a decision. It's not just, oh, is the MBA going to make me more money? There are a lot of elements to it. What are your circumstances? What is your financial situation? At what stage of your career do you find yourself in? What are your ambitions? Because again, humans don't necessarily have to work towards a linear trajectory. Things change, passions change, ambitions grow or diminish, whatever the case may be. So you can't ever find two people who have identical intentions with where they want to go in their lives. And I think, touching on that question, which has just come through from Claudia, our founder did his executive MBA towards his late 40s. And it's been an incredible experience for him, not only the network, but also the experience itself. So I don't think there's too early or too late, but I would completely agree with Jonathan that if you do not have work experience, then a master's is definitely what you should be looking at, because at least in my opinion and from my experience of the candidates that apply to us, work experience will almost always trump any degree you have. If you have the degree and no work experience, it only tells us that you are a very strong academic performer, but we don't know whether you can apply everything you've learned theoretically in the context of business development, the context of sales and delivery. So, and this is also very aligned to my personal opinion. When I'm asked about the Harvard Business School online course, which I completed, for me, that was important because I don't come from a business background, academically speaking. So I needed a couple of the tools that would enable me to perform better at my job. But if I had completed, say, a degree, a master's that was more focused on business, then the core program, Credential of Readiness, isn't that relevant to me. And it's in the name, Credential of Readiness. If you have those skill sets, then you don't need to do it. If you come from a different background, you're transitioning, you're very passionate about business, you're interested in startups, then a course like that makes sense. So I just wanted to add that, Matthew.
Thanks, Dimitrios. No, I think, you know, as several, sorry.
There's one question on whether you should do it in your 50s. I'm willing to give some input,
sure,
just because I did have people that were in their 50s when they were in my program. A few people did not have undergraduate degrees, and they wanted, and their companies wanted to promote them into very senior level positions, and they did not have an undergraduate degree. And so they put them through this program, and one of them ended up, who was an enormously skilled negotiator. He ended up as CEO of a large manufacturing company in Buffalo, New York. That was the right move, right? So I've seen people play this. If they don't have an undergraduate degree, they can use the executive program. And if the company's paying for it and they're saying, hey, you know, we would prefer if you have, you know, some sort of university education, and they didn't have it, that this did benefit them greatly. However, if you're looking at it from an ROI perspective, I would say that you need to think really hard about whether or not this is something you want to do in your 50s.
Yeah, I think that I do want to get to the ROI part and the cost, but before we go there, I think as Kenneth just asked, all of you I think have mentioned about the network, and a lot of people that I've spoken to, sort of friends and coworkers who have done MBAs or have decided not to, that often comes down to, that often is the determinative factor. I'll learn what I learned in an MBA program, but I could learn the same as Jonathan said from Coursera, or I could learn the same from work experience myself. But I can't get this network that I can tap into of HBS grads, of Ivey grads, of Wharton grads. How has the network benefited you, Mike? And how much of that do you see really being intrinsic to the program that you did, rather than just your own personality and sort of the way you would follow up with anybody that you interacted with? And then Dimitrios, I'd be interested in your perspective too, relative to the fact that you did a sort of mini MBA, and what's the pros and cons in the context of the network.
So I'm working on a project now with a guy that I met at the, who did this MBA at Ivey. We met through the program. So, we become friends and decided to work on something together. So I would say that, that has happened. There are many people that I meet through the Ivey network who have, where they did hire classmates or have worked together. So there are clearly people who have chosen based on the closeness that they had to work together on projects and whatnot at the school, that they ended up, working together. And I think in the future, you're going to see a lot more of this as people look to business schools, not just to go up the corporate ladder, but to do, to take on entrepreneurial type ventures that a lot of people are going to find their partners, their early partners in business school, just because they're similar, they have similar motivations and they've enjoyed working together on projects over the last, 1 or 2 years. So I have seen, don't get me wrong, I've seen people, work for people that they were in class with. And, you could tap into it. I don't want to oversell it, because it's not like I can knock on, the president of RBC went to Ivey, I don't call him up and, ask for a senior level position at the Royal Bank of Canada. But that opportunity is at least there. You could try it, and he probably wouldn't delete your email. So there you go.
What about you, Dimitrios? Do you find that the network, did that figure into your calculus in deciding to do this credential of readiness versus an EMBA?
I think in my particular case, considering that the program was online, and I think we do need to touch upon this, especially in a more virtual world, so to speak, over the last 12 to 18 months. If this was an in-person program, there is no doubt that the value of the program itself would be incomparable, in my opinion. Networking online is, at least with the technology we have available to us right now, is not, in my opinion, as useful or as successful, if you want to call it that, in comparison to networking in person. So I think anybody looking to do degrees that are now pre-recorded, because I know that a lot of universities have moved to online offerings, do think about that very, very carefully. Because again, ask yourself, can I learn what I'm about to pay money for in a work context? Is the networking going to be as valuable as an in-person program? So I think that it's so much easier to connect with people, build rapport, find out about them, understand what their motivations are when you're doing that over a glass of wine, or whether it is at an event where you get that opportunity to actually connect, as opposed to be sat in front of a computer back-to-back meetings all day, and then there's a networking event. I think we can all attest to Zoom fatigue. And so in my particular case, yes, I was part of a couple of WhatsApp groups and a Facebook group, and that is an added element to it, but I wouldn't say that it factors more than 5 to 10% of the decision-making process as to why go ahead and pursue such a program. In my particular case, I needed the skills and the tools, so that took up the majority of the reasoning behind me going ahead with it. And then the brand obviously played an important decision, as Jonathan said, because it boosts me. It gives me an opportunity to not have that business background, academically speaking, do a 3.5-month super intensive program and essentially learn 2 years worth of content that I would learn if I was doing a 3 to 4 year program in person, so to speak. So I believe the networking value is tremendous in a master's degree as well, and definitely in an MBA, but it's very different if you're doing it online as opposed to doing it in person. At least, again, this is from my experience, so please feel free to refute that statement completely if you've experienced something different to what I've experienced over the last couple of months.
Well, I think that's a really good point. And I think, the online aspect is something to consider. And I think that somewhat, Jonathan, you probably have a better perspective on this, but I do think that people hearing about network is part of what drives some of the cynicism around MBAs. Like, I'm not going to learn a ton that I couldn't learn for free. Why am I paying $150,000, $200,000, $250,000 to meet some people? So let's talk about the downsides of an MBA, or not the downsides of an MBA, but rather the sort of the constraints that you must consider, or the reasons not to do an MBA. I think chief among those is probably cost, and thinking about different ways to finance that relative to where you are in your career. But Jonathan, I'd love to hear your perspective on that. How you counsel your clients both to pay for it themselves, or if there's an employer sponsorship, should they take it, that kind of thing.
So if you have a sponsorship, you definitely take it. I mean, yes, you have to break it post MBA if you find a better job, but it's okay. The new employer may pay for it. At the moment, you have a free MBA. You're not sure you're going to find something better, so it's a no-brainer. You take your sponsorship, you sign your contract. You can still break it post MBA, and you make a loan if you have to. But definitely, if it's sponsored, go for it. I think the cost really depends. Like the premise, like, I mean, Michael mentioned, I think, like, his EMBA was $19,000, like mid 2000. I mean, oh, 90, okay. Now, like, I mean, the cost of an EMBA in the region in APAC is like, 150,000 USD and above. The cost of an MBA is like 150,000 and above for like 2-year program. So the cost is ridiculous, even at lower business school. And that's the danger here. If you go to a top 30 MBA program, like, your ROI is going to be 5 years max. Like, within 5 years, you'll have repay your loan because you have your internship, you have your signing bonus, you have higher salary. So it's more like the trick is like, I'm not going to name any school, but let's say you go to like a school that is not in the top 100 that charge you 100,000 USD for your MBA program. Do you really want to take that risk? And that's and that's where like the risk exposure start to be higher, and you have to really take, I would say, a very different approach. Now, when it comes to a top MBA program, like, go ahead, spend all of your saving because you won't beat the interest rate. That's a given. So like, do not keep your savings somewhere. They won't be useful. Spend as much as you can from your saving for your tuition fee, and then make the smallest amount of loan as you can. Because except if you are a finance manager, a hedge fund manager, and you know how to beat the markets, the typical interest rate in the region is like 7%. You're not going to beat that 7% without spending every day on your stock markets. And you don't want to do that, right? So cost-wise, usually the breakdown is like, most of my MBA applicants would have 50,000 USD max in savings because they come with 4, 5, 6 years experience, and then they complement with a loan. Worst case scenario, if they can't get a loan from their bank, we look at fintech solutions, one being Prodigy Finance. It's guaranteed you get the loan. It's 8% interest rate, but you can refinance it fairly fast. So it's very effective. But yes, I mean, for an EMBA, the cost is, it's much higher, but you keep your job, so you can still finance. Like, I mean, there are installment plan, but I think the cost of an MBA has definitely skyrocketed. And to be entirely fair to the school, it's because the costs have skyrocketed. I used to work for what we call a second tier school. I mean, to get the professor, we'll basically fly a team to Harvard, talk to a couple of professors, and offer them, 3 times what they earn at Harvard for them to come to us, and they will come. You go from 200,000 a year to $1 million a year, you don't think twice. You come to a second tier school, and build your savings like for your retirement. So cost has increased a lot. Marketing cost is tremendous. The student acquisition cost is huge, even at school like INSEAD, LBS. I mean, they spend a lot in marketing. So all of those extra costs has been, of course, redirected towards the tuition fee. So cost is huge, but when we look at ROI at top 20 school, it's like 3 to 5 years. You'll get a ROI. I mean, it's an investment. Whereas students, at the end of the day, it's an investment. It's a very low risk investment. It's very unlikely it's going to backfire. But the same way you buy a house, you do your research, it's safe, but there is no 100% guarantee the price is going to go up. It could go down eventually. There could be something happening. So we always tell them to be cautious, but it's usually really not like the financing has never been like too much of an issue, like because people have planned for it. Now, none of my applicants, except my very wealthy applicants, those are like the lucky ones, like no applicants have the cash to pay full tuition, right? So they have to, I mean, scholarship comes a lot. So US schools being very wealthy, you would have, 50% scholarship at least for a lot of students. So it reduced significantly like the cost of the MBA. So it's really about get the higher GMAT as possible to position yourself as like, someone who get the best scholarships and then work on your financing. But for people who are looking at non-ranked school, that's definitely something you want to really be careful around.
I can give you my personal, the only personal story I have. So my father was accepted to Harvard Business School in 1973, and he'd worked at IBM for 10 years, and he'd been on the trajectory. I was 7 and my sister was 5, and it meant moving everybody to Boston to attend Harvard, and he turned it down. This was a big mistake in his life, but this is what he did. He thought that his opportunity at IBM was so great that taking 2 years out of his life to go to Harvard was not the right call. Now we ended up moving, so we moved around a bit. We lived in the States for a while. And then he came back. There was about 5 men that were offered, or that had the potential to be president of IBM Canada, and he was not chosen. And he quit. And again, I feel that this one event changed the trajectory of his life. So had he gone to Harvard, had he made that decision, that I think he would have committed, IBM would have paid for it, and he would have stuck around, and eventually he would have gotten the job that he wanted. So I saw somebody in the chat sort of ask this question, should you do it with young families, which is kind of why I brought up this story. So his decision was not to, that this was too much of a disruption to pick up his young children and move them to Boston. My mother would take care of us completely as he studied, 20 hours a day doing this, and he decided not to. But I think there are other programs where you don't have to give up, obviously, your life. You don't have to move your whole family. You can do it on a part-time basis. And if you have a supportive spouse, I think it can be done. Now, in this particular situation in my family, my father chose not to do it, which I think turned out to be probably a mistake. But if you've got a supportive spouse, I think it can be done. And if you get a great opportunity in life, and as Jonathan said, if the company is going to pay for it, in almost all circumstances, there is no reason to turn that down. That's my story. I don't know how good.
Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Dimitrios, what about you? What are some of the sort of downsides or constraints that you considered or that you would consider?
I think that taking a 3.5-month program is incomparable cost-wise to actually doing a full-time MBA program at one of the leading universities. I do feel a little bit uncomfortable about encouraging people to take on so much debt early on in their lives. So I think circumstances matter, and so does your financial position. If you're 22, 23, and you've just come out of your first degree, your bachelor's, and you're looking to do a master's, I don't think it makes sense to take on 150, 200,000 US dollars of debt. I just think it sets you up for so much stress at a period of your time where you need to be focusing on being super creative, on making an impact, on pursuing your passions. So if you have other debt, for example, then you don't want to be adding even more debt. That's one thing to consider. If you have savings, if your company is paying for it, then in that case, definitely. It's very important to know whether you're risk prone or risk averse. What is your risk profile, in other words? What is your financial situation? What is your plan? Because Jonathan has rightly said there's a 5-year plan, and I would hope that that's the best case scenario. But in the event that something happens, of course, it's important to only focus on controlling the controllables. The things happen in life, and if you can't pay it off in 5 years and you need another 2, how much pressure is that going to put on you? Do you have kids? How are your parents? Do you need to take care of the older generation? Whatever the case may be, there's so many components in terms of where you could be putting your money to, which brings me to a well-known concept in the world of business, opportunity costs. what is the opportunity cost of taking or not taking an MBA or an offer or whatever the case may be. So it's not just, oh, I'll do this because it's great for me. Well, you could put that money into building your own startup. And I don't mean to sound naive, but if you are creative, if you are entrepreneurial, 150, 200,000 US dollars can take you a long way. And with all due respect, the ROI on that is going to be potentially, again, it's a risk, there's no guarantees, you could fail and lose all the money you've put in your business. But if it does go well, then within 3, 4, 5, 6 years, you could have an exponential ROI in comparison. Again, a lot to consider and a lot to factor, but I just sometimes feel a little bit uncomfortable about encouraging people to go into 200,000 US dollars of debt mid-20s. Please, Jonathan, go ahead.
Yeah, by no means I was trying to encourage. I mean, I never took a loan myself, so I'm a bit embarrassed to encourage people taking loan. But on the entrepreneurship side, I think there is something important. And I'm going to share a personal story, and I'm going to share also basic statistics. I'll start with the statistics. So PitchBook, which is like a VC research company, produce every year a report on universities and MBA, and the numbers are just outstanding. I mean, the top 25 MBA graduate, alumni since 2006, last year raised 30% of the overall VC amount raised globally. So yes, the opportunity cost, it's true. Should I start? I mean, we always follow this. If I have 100,000, do I start a startup? Do I go for an MBA? Truth be told, when you go to a top program, the amount of resources you're given, you have the startup lab, you have your faculty, you have VC. I mean, dude, I've seen people going to Stanford with shitty ID getting funding. That's how dumb it has become, to be entirely honest. But it's happening. There is someone trying to launch an MBA coaching online, which is that's already exists. But because at Stanford, they got $1 million funding. And I'm this is just nuts. So I would definitely not disagree with you, but I've seen it also personally. So when I started to build my own company, getting interest was easy, but closing the deal with VC was extremely hard. So I brought in the process of entrepreneurship at a top business school, and it changed the whole dynamic. So unfortunately, because we live in such a brand-centered world, yes, it will make more sense to start a company straight if you have the right idea, the right co-founder. And unfortunately, you realize that people who go to business school tend to do better on the funding. Now, it doesn't mean they do better on completing the idea, but funding, unfortunately, in tech entrepreneurship is crucial because speed is crucial. So again, there are always pros and cons. There is no white or black. It's really it's a holistic approach. But unfortunately, on the entrepreneurship, MBA carry a lot of weight. And do we agree or not? It's a different topic, but it's definitely happening.
Thank you very much, Arnaud. That was a perfect summary here. I think we've only got a couple minutes left, and I do want to make sure we take some time for questions from the audience. I hope we've addressed those that have come up so far, but if you felt like your question didn't get answered, feel free to jump in now. Oh, we've got a question here from Winton. So sort of a MBA as a hedge against different scenarios. I don't want to speak for the panelists, but I think some of them have addressed this already in terms of the opportunity costs and putting your money into an MBA as a way to hedge against certain risks. Dimitrios, do you want to start with this one?
Very good question.
Or anyone.
No, very good question. Very good question. First of all, I think you mentioned uncertainty you mentioned the uncertainty in the market, and I think that's very important to factor because 3 to 4 years time, the market's going to be very different, especially considering how fast the market's moved over the last year and a half. The technological innovations. Apparently, someone came out and said we've made more progress in the last year than we would have made in 6 to 10 years. So the speed is incredible. And so it's important to factor what your plans are in those 3 to 4 years. So I wouldn't pursue an MBA as a stepping stone, only as a stepping stone. There needs to be, in my opinion, a more holistic plan in terms of what are you going to do A, B, C, D to ensure that your chances of success are higher. I think as an idea, it's great, but there are definitely more steps in terms of the research, in terms of understanding how the Canadian job market is going to develop over the next couple of years. What are other potential risks, opportunity costs? Are there other places you're looking to move to? what is higher education in those countries. So definitely good that you're thinking 3 to 4 years ahead, but also factor in what other potential questions or issues could come out, which could either move you in a different direction or make you go into this even more in terms of your ambition to move to Canada.
I think moving countries is the older you get, it's much more difficult. You know, you've built up an entire network, you know the people, you know what's going on. All of your contacts are in one city. I mean, my personal experience is that you know, if you're going to move, you need to, you know, do it young, just because I think it's a lot easier to do it. I understand his hedge getting MBA. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a bad strategy. And I think in Canada, you know, you know, if you have a degree from the University of Hong Kong, you know, is that going to be well respected in Canada? I don't know. I would say not as highly as a Canadian degree. So you'll need to think about whether that, you know, makes sense for you. But if you truly see your future in Canada, I'm not sure that. Like, I understand why people work in Hong Kong, because you can make more money in Hong Kong. If you can save it, if you can make it and save it, then fantastic. Take your money, go to Canada, live a nice life. But again, if you think it's going to be an easy transition, I think sometimes it's harder than you think.
Yeah. So I do want to, we're pretty much out of time here, so I want to wrap up, but I do want to invite any of our audience to stick around for 5 more minutes after this, because there's one great question that sort of gets to a topic that we'd hoped to have time for today, but we just didn't, which is sort of the future of education, the future of MBA programs. How are they evolving? So if you do have to get going, we want to respect your schedule and get you out of here on time. But if you have 5 more minutes to stick around till say 2:05, we will be addressing that. But before we go to there, let me just say that it's been a real pleasure to help moderate this discussion. I wanted to thank each of you, Mike, Dimitrios, and Jonathan, for taking the time to speak today and share your insights. I don't think we gave anybody an answer as to you must do an MBA or you must not, but I think that wasn't our goal. So that's hopefully you've got some more insight, those of you in the audience. And a big thank you to all of you attendees who joined us today. If you do want to connect with myself or with any of our speakers, please feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn. You can see all of our full names and sort of employment situation in the panelist participants window of Zoom. The Chamber has many events coming up in the next couple of weeks and months, including a Canada Day cocktail, a virtual meet and greet, and a CSR event in support of Make-A-Wish Hong Kong. So we hope to see you at one of those events very soon. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us today, and hope to see you very soon at one of our next events.
Great, thanks, Matt.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate the time today.
Thank you. So let's sort of in the after show here, let's tackle that last question. I think you know, we take it however you want, but I'd be interested to hear from each of you. I think basically we're talking about the future of MBAs, but I think more broadly the future of higher and continuing education in general. How, from my perspective, I think one of the things that's called into question is really that ROI is what are you spending money on and what are you getting, especially as the cost of education of all types continues to increase. And there are a proliferation of ways to access seemingly 80%, 90% of the same value at little or no cost. But I'd be interested to hear from each of you with your perspectives, both professionally and personally, where you see this developing. So
I think 2 things, like will education change over the next 50 years? For sure. I mean, I personally believe like even undergraduate degrees are going to disappear in the next 50 or maybe 75 years, simply because job market is changing so fast. You have new skills available, I mean, needed every day. And we can't allow like to spend 4 years at school, you know, between high school and our first job, because our first job may disappear the next 5 years later. But that's going to take a lot of time. And as of today, people who are going for an MBA, they don't really have an option, because online courses, unfortunately, are mostly not recognized by the job market. People go to school for better employability. So until corporations start to really embrace online courses, and we thought when LinkedIn acquired like Linda that they were going to push further like all the online courses. They're trying hard, but like big companies are still not, you know, I mean, they're not going to address it to weight it the same way. Like someone went to a full-time program or part-time like real program versus the same program online. It's perception-wise is still very different. So I think Would our kids have more opportunities? Definitely. Our grandchildren will definitely have a very different education than what we had ourselves. But people today who are in their 20s, early 30s, or late 30s, early 40s, they don't really have the choice. They can learn on their own, and that's one thing. Learning on your own, it's great. But would you be able to bank on that for like a new job? Very unlikely. But there was one question I just want, and I know I've taken a bit too much time, but like, how did the MBA evolve over the last few years? I think the core curriculum hasn't changed, because a general management degree, you have all those core courses you have to go to. But the way they change is on how they basically market themselves towards people. Like millennials are very passionate about impact. All of my MBA applicants, they want to have an impact. So you see at school, you have impact investors in residence, you have social impact pathways, impact social entrepreneurship. So I think schools are adapting more towards the demand, and they're definitely evolving, but the demand is driving that evolution.
I'd have to agree with everything you said.
Thanks, John.
I mean, I think I bought lifelong association with an institution that I was confident was going to be there in 25 years. And if it's going to sit on the bottom of my resume, that's what I want. And I don't know whether Udemy or Coursera, is going to be there. Ivey, I know at Ivey they're talking a lot about lifelong learning, whether or not the programs can offer education for the remainder of your life. These are the kind of things that they're debating, because they understand that that's the differentiator for them, is that the government has given them the authority to grant bachelor's degrees, and I expect that they're going to continue to be able to do it for the next 50 years or more, 100 years, and that's the association that I was buying. I'm a proud alumni of, I enjoy the whole thing, and I consider it to have been worth it as a result.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dimitrios, to jump in. I think that that's something that is tough, is evaluating the sort of value of the skills versus the knowledge. And it's hard not to take a more transactional approach to education as the costs increase and the competitiveness increases. If you say, I can do this micro degree to get this job, then of course you're going to try and minimize the sort of wastage in the things that you quote unquote don't need to learn. But I think sort of intrinsic in what we're all in agreement about, which is to say that it doesn't matter where you went to school 3-5 years after you start working, or at least doesn't matter as much. It matters more than how you think, how you learn, how you approach your work, how you approach your relationships. And I think that, to me personally, that drives the value of something like a more free floating liberal arts undergraduate degree. And that's something that's irreplaceable, that you can't go back and do a 3-month course on Udemy. You can't do a distance learning on that. So that's my skeptical take, I suppose. But Dimitrios, sorry to interrupt.
Yes, no, not at all. The future of higher education, the future of work is changing rapidly. I think whether you decide to pursue an MBA or not, I think it's very important to know and to get comfortable with the fact that we're all going to have to upskill more than once in our lives. Things are moving so rapidly, whether it's upskilling, cross-skilling, whatever the case may be, whether it's in your industry, whether it's in other industries, it's very important to keep that in mind. So whether you do an MBA now, 5-10 years down the line, it's going to be a very different job market, very different dynamics, very different things are going to be relevant then in comparison to now. So I'm glad we haven't taken either a do an MBA or do not do an MBA approach, because the whole point of this webinar was to exchange our ideas and hear from a number of pros, including Jonathan and Michael, in terms of their own experiences, not only in their personal and professional realms. So I'm glad we've come to a point where there are a lot of pros and there are cons, and it's important to, just depending on your current position, to do the checklist and to decide what's best for you. And of course, feel free to reach out to the rest of the panelists as well, or myself, if you feel like I can add some value in terms of any other questions you may have, whether it's on LinkedIn or on here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitrios. And do look up Prep Zone Academy if you're in need of professional help.
Yeah, we can be here to help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate the time today.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.